Good evening, good afternoon. Yeah. Good evening, good afternoon, and welcome. Thank you for inviting me. It's really good to see all of you people with or without a camera. And of course, for me, it will be better to have a conversation, but I will start with something like 30 minutes. English is not my native tongue, but I believe that you will understand most of my words, and of course you can ask. And then I will be more than happy and more than glad to hear your questions, but also your comments and your thoughts on this subject, because I believe it's not a subject that is private for our organizations or we people. It's really in the heart of the conflict, really in the heart of our obligation toward peace as a big value, and of course one of God's name, and also peace as a political concept, and very, very practically. Right now I'm in Nirim. It's a kibbutz on the border of Gaza. I live in Sderot. My wife lives in Nirim. It's a complicated story, but right now we had 2 alarms in this area, and we are in the midst of complicated time. In Israel, it's always complicated time, of course, but you know that tomorrow we will have the Jerusalem Day, and a lot of people, I believe, also here pray that that will be a silent day, and a day that we really can share and connect to our Jerusalem in a broader way, to Jews and Arabs and Muslim and Jews and so on. As the concept of a lot of concept in Judaism. Of course, there isn't only one Judaism, and I hope it will be so. Tomorrow I will be in Jerusalem, and I hope to be part of I don't know if quiet, but not a very dramatic Jerusalem Day. So I will start with a few words about myself to understand the connection between this concept of religious and religion and peace, or peace, religious peace movement, if I can say it so, and then share a few comments and thoughts about this idea. And as I mentioned, I will be more than happy and glad to hear from you. Hanan mentioned that we are partners as organizations, but I believe we are partners as people. And we have to give a lot of strength to this idea, because I really believe that this is crucial for my kids, for the kids of this area, Sderot, Gaza, and other places in Israel and in the Middle East and in the whole world. So I was born in 1976 in Ashkelon. It's the most southern city of the seashore, on the seashore of Israel, 8-9 kilometers from Gaza. Actually, for me, and this is really interesting because my kids can believe me, Gaza was our big city. Ashkelon was a small city then, and Gaza was bigger city. And we used to go to the market of Gaza. Actually, my father was in the army inside of Gaza. And we went to the beach, and you can ask the people that grew up in the kibbutzim on the border, Nahal Oz, Nirim, and other kibbutzim, that they took the tractor in the end of the day and go to the nearest beach on Gaza. And it was like that till 87, and more than that, but in 87 was the first Intifada, and things changed. In 1993, I went to Jerusalem. I had kind of a gap year because I skipped 1 year in elementary school. I grew up in Orthodox religious, right-wing politically, and Mizrahi-oriented family from Libya and Syria. And in 93, I had this gap year before my army service, and I went to Jerusalem to learn Judaism, more Judaism, because I went to yeshiva, Or Etzion. It's the yeshiva of Rabbi Chaim Druckman, and I was part of Bnei Akiva and so on. And then I had a lot of religious question, if I can say so, like on my practice, my religious practice. So I went to learn more Judaism, and that was historical moments. Again, in Israel, it's always historical and hysterical, but it was historical moments because it was 3 months. I was there in December 93. It was 3 months after the Oslo Accord, the first Oslo agreement between Rabin and Yasser Arafat, between Israel and the PLO. And Jerusalem was like on fire in terms of struggle against the Oslo Accord. And I, of course, was part of it because I came from this area of Orthodox religious right-wing family and friends and community and so on. And I was part of those rallies and demonstrations and so on. But then on the course of the way, I really felt, I'm talking a lot with young people in Israel, and I'm always telling them that first you feel in your stomach, in your belly. You know, we can talk about notion, about political notion, and this is really important, and we will do so. But first, you must feel, and it is the first thing, and sometimes even the last thing that can change something. And I really felt that it became more and more violent. It was only the beginning, of course, 2 years before the assassination of Rabin. And I always ask my friends and my colleagues to the rallies and the struggle against the Oslo Accord, what is the alternative? You know, we don't like Oslo Accord. It has a lot of difficulties. Till now, I criticize this agreement, but what is the alternative? Because if we are religious people that pray at least 3 times a day, Oseh Shalom Bimromav, and other really nice and deep thoughts about peace, what is our alternative as religious and people, Israelis and Zionists and so on? And I didn't get answers for that. I must say, for the favor of the right wing, I believe that on those years, the last years, there is more answers to that. For me, it's most of them dangerous, but they have answers. But then it was like, we are against that. We are against given lands. We are against the agreements. We are against talking to the PLO. We are against talking about Palestinians, even Palestinians as a nation, and so on. So this was the first time, the first crack for me that really after that led me to another way. And again, I'm always saying to those young people in Israel that I really feel right now, even though I was in Meretz and I was a candidate and so on, that I'm kind of a left-right person and a religious secular person and a kibbutz and a city, developed city in Israel and so on. And I really feel that for me, it makes sense. Although in Israel, it's like there are a lot of gaps between those communities and notions and identities and so on. And I remember that in '96, that was the first time that I went to vote. It was in the last year of my army service. And I voted to Shimon Peres and to Meretz, and Netanyahu won. That was the first time that they got into power. It was kind of specific elections between Netanyahu and Shimon Peres. And then I met a lot of people that was in favor of the left, from left-wing orientation, and they were like in shock, and they were very afraid. It was, I believe, I was only one year old then, but in 77, when it was the first time that the right wing went into power in Israel, it was like that. And so I heard, that people got really scared that Menachem Begin will come and there will be a terrible war and it will be like a fascist Israel and so on. And I told those people, maybe Netanyahu will do the same, and we will have surprises. And he was young and he was talented, he's still talented, and maybe we will have those kind of surprises. And I believe it's like right now we are in kind of this situation, political situation, that we are in like in Israel in a debate or in a question. Can Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett, can they lead the country? And really, I don't know. And I hope that they will. And I hope that there will be hope for us and for this country. But again, in 96, that was the situation. And of course, things got changed. And in 1999, it was really interesting because that was the first, maybe even the last time that I could pursue and ask my father to vote to the left. It was Ehud Barak and the Labor. And the Labor was part of what they called One Israel. And it was the Labor and Memad and Gesher. It's the party of David Levy that my family really, they loved him very much because of he was coming from Morocco and so on. And Memad was the symbol and the political notion of religious peace movement. Then it was Michael Malkior. I believe that a lot of you knows Rabbi Malkior. And that was the first time that, and last time that my father went and voted to the left, because he understand, for him, it was the first time that it all got connected. The religious part, his identity as one that came from Tripoli, from Libya, and the part that really believes in peace, even though it is maybe strange nowadays, but even so, that he came from the right-wing perspective. So for me, it was part of my adulthood to understand that there was, right now, I believe that there isn't, but there was kind of a religious peace movement. For me, it was Memad, but also Shas. Maybe it is a surprise for you, but Shas was part of the Oslo Accord. And Ovadia Yosef, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, he gave this halachic statement that you must or you can give lands in order to save life of people. And for me, it was connected really deeply to the tradition of my family, as it used. We used to talk about the modernity of the people that came from the Arab countries, the Jews that came from Arab countries. And I really believe that it has some, of course, it's not all the reality, but it has some deep reality. And right now it is changes. And for me, for a bad way, in a bad way. So that was my background. And in 2014, we were, my family and I, we were in Gaza area. Then it was Bror Chayil, it's a kibbutz near Sderot. If we are talking about Judaism, it was the last settlement of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, which is a great model for me. And then I led the establishment of the movement for the future of the Western Negev. It was in the midst of Protective Edge, and it was terrible times for us, 2 months of being in the midst of a war zone. And we understood that we must take an action. And actually it was interesting because in Sderot, it all started for me that in Sderot, there was a kind of community that got together in order to push the Israeli government to give order to the army, to the IDF, to go inside Gaza. There is always a debate to go inside on the ground or not after a week too. And really, they asked me to come and to talk in favor of that. And of course, I told them that I believe that it's not the way, and there will be people that will kill from our IDF, our army, and the people in Gaza and the people all around, and we will go to the same point again after this war. But it was really an inspiration for me, because that was the first time that I heard people in Sderot, in the midst of a war, do something that it's not in line with the government. It was from the right wing, but it wasn't in the line of the government, and they didn't waited for the, I don't know, the prime minister or the government to go in a good direction in their eyes, but they did something, and this is really important. And for me, it was really important to talk with my friend and ask them, can we do something like that with our ideas of diplomatic solution, with our ideas of peace as a big notion and a political notion? And we did. We established the movement for the future of the Western Negev. And it was really interesting because a lot of people, even from the right wing, most of them not, but even from the right wing, got together with us. And it was really interesting because in our area and in Israel, it's not common that people from Sderot and Ofakim and Netivot and Ashkelon will make something with the people of the kibbutzim. There is a traditional and historical gaps between those two. So it was really interesting for me, and I just remember that we used to have, when we were in the yeshiva, the Or Etzion and Bnei Akiva, we used to have this book that called Haim Yesh Sikui La'ava, Is There a Chance for Love? And it was kind of a new age religious book. And for me, it's always, I ask myself, is there a chance for love in this situation of a war, protective edge, or in this situation nowadays in our situation before critical Jerusalem Day and so on. And for me, the movement for the future of the Western Negev was a very clear and deep answer. Yes, there is a chance for love, and there is a chance that people that are not living together and in other identities, and that someone tells them that it's conflict identities, they can get along together in order to make a political statement and to make an activism that promote common interest, common political interest. So that was really interesting for me. And then I went to the political sphere. I was a part of Meretz. I was in the 8th place, and I really tried to make a difference in the left wing in order to promote the connection between the left wing in Israel and the peripheries in terms of geographical and socio-economic peripheries. And I failed. Right now, Meretz it's the same party as always, the party of the center of Israel in terms of, again, geographical and socio-economic. But I really believe that this is part of the solution. When we have this kind of align and connection between the center of Israel and the periphery, something good will come. Not only in terms of our conversation of peace, but also in terms of the biggest and the deepest peace. A lot of religious people from the right wing talking about the peace inside of the Jewish nation, or the Jews in Israel, or the Jews in all. We will start with ourselves, and then everything will be okay. And I don't really believe in that as a full and a whole concept, but I believe in that this is part of the solution. And again, for me, part of the healing, part of making this peace between Sderot and Gaza, it's also connecting those people in Sderot. Half of the people in Sderot didn't go to vote last time. So this is part of being connected to the Israeli society. So just a few quick thoughts, and then I will open that to your comments and questions. The first thing that came to mind when I thought about this conversation is how dynamic the political reality is. And this is kind of, banal thing to say, but I just mentioned the first Intifada, and that was the time that Rabbis for Human Rights got established. And why is that? Because for a lot of Jews, Israelis Jews, that was the first time that they understand that there is something like Palestinian nation, and there is something like Palestinian politics and a need for freedom or parliament and so on. And before the first Intifada in '87, there was polls in Israel, and only 19% of Jews Israelis said we are supporting the notion of two-state solution, and Palestine and Israel and so on. And after the first Intifada in 90 or 91, it was 59%. So the reality really changes. I must say that in the second Intifada, it was not the same numbers, but it was the opposite, of course, because people that really believe that this is the only solution, and we are going, even from the right, because Netanyahu got voted on this ticket that it will make safe peace, as he called it, in '96, and after that, Ariel Sharon, he said only Sharon will bring peace. But then after the second Intifada, the numbers got lower. It's still something like 35, 36%. It's not like before the first Intifada, but still, the reality is really dynamic, and things from outside, and I believe that also things from inside, like your initiation, Shorashim or Roots, or Rabbis for Human Rights, or people, not only organization, can make a difference. And the second thing that I was thinking of is that maybe in this, this community, it is obvious, but I believe that that the heart of the conflict is around religion. When it started, when it got turned from a neighboring conflict between Jews and Muslim, Arabs and Jews and so on in Israel, before it was Israel, it started with those notions of El-Husseini and others that said, why they came here, the Jews from Europe, they came to take Al-Aqsa. They came to take our sacred places. And when it got connection, there is a lot of power, of course, in religion. And when you use this power in order to make war, or in order to make conflict, it is very powerful. And of course, we are all, I believe, we are all part of this movement that try to take this problematic and this problem and turn it into the solution. And I really believe that this is on the heart of things. Again, we are 100 years from the first lectures of El-Husseini, the Mufti, about Al-Aqsa and so on. And tomorrow, or nowadays, we are seeing still, this is the thing, the Al-Aqsa or the Temple Mount, and this place that is like on fire. That fire, of course, can burn, and fire can be something really useful for humankind. So this is another thing, and I believe that we have the same mission in this notion, and we are partners, as Hanan mentioned, in this idea. The third thing that I thought about, Hanan mentioned Land for All. And that was, for me, I joined it on the first days that it started. And for me, that was the first time that I heard the people, my friends in the left, that talking in a very deep respect about the holy places, in a very deep respect about Hebron and Shechem, Nablus, and Bethlehem, and the Kotel is Jerusalem, and so on. And it was like, I really was hopeless about this notion. I believe that the people from the left doesn't understand. That's okay. I'm voting for the left, and they are my partners and friends and so on. But they don't understand that my family came from Syria and Libya because of those places. And you can't say, you know, you are praying for these places for many years, and you came because of that, because of Zion, because of this notion. And then in one day you can say they will be there, this is Palestine, and we will be here, Israel, and that's it. So of course Land for All started from that, to understand that there is a deep connection for Jews, and again for Arabs, for Palestinians, to this land. And I believe that a very deep notion, like Rabbi Menachem Fruman had, this notion that we are belonging to the land, and not the opposite, it can be only from religion. You know, like in this portion of the week, we talked about Shemitah, and we talked about the way that the land is not ours. The land is God's land. And it is so deep, because we are used to, of course, in this culture, in this capitalist culture and so on, we used to think in a very I can say in even in a natural way, that it's ours. You know, the land is ours, the car is ours, the wife is ours, and so on. And Judaism said no, and not only Judaism, but Judaism said no. There is another connection to things. It's not only connection of belonging, and it's mine and it's yours, and so on. And the last thought that I thought that I will share with you, it's the notion that we will talk about in Shavuot, Na'aseh v'nishma. The Jewish basic notion, because the Midrash said that you know, we didn't get the chance to get the Torah first. God went to a lot of nations and asked, do you want the Torah? Do you want the Torah? Do you want the Torah? And only and he came to us the last, and this is really interesting. And we got the Torah because we said Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do, and then we will hear. And it sounds really confusing, and of course, it's not making any logic. But for me, this is the idea of organization and of our mission. Like again, in private and communities and so on, and in organization, we must do. And in the last 2 years, we have this crazy crisis, political crisis, and we heard so much of politicians talking. And I don't talk about politicians like, you know, they are bad or in a cynical way, because I was part of it. But it's only talking and talking and talking. And I can see we are working a lot in Rabbis for Human Rights with people that lives in poverty, and people without food security and so on. And you can see that this crisis, it's make so much difference to them in a very bad way, because we haven't got a nation budget for 3 years, and there is no strategy, of course, we are talking about Corona days and so on, how to help those people and communities and so on. So we must hear this voice again of Na'aseh v'nishma. We must think about the way that we will do, and not just hear. And I think about the teaching in Shavuot. A lot of teaching in Israel. It's great to see. It's hundreds of places and maybe thousands of places that in synagogues and other places that people will learn the Torah in a humanistic and secular way, and traditional and reform and orthodox and so on. But I always think about that we can learn and teach about the Gerim, the people that came to live with us, but and talk, of course, about Ruth and so on. And then we will, in the day after Shavuot, we will still kind of ruin their life and ask them to be something else and to be in line with us and so on. And we can talk about the tzedakah and the shmita and so on. And again, a day after, we can make a lot of money from these loans and those people that work for us and so on. So the notion of na'aseh v'nishma, nishma v'na'aseh, we will do in here, hear and do, it's a very deep notion that for me, if we are talking about making this progress of rebuilding and reestablish, and even in a bigger way of religious peace movement, we must think about the acts, not just about the ideas. The ideas is very important. Of course, we have to have a theory of change and strategy and so on, but we must think about acts that make a kind of a change for people's life. In Sderot, you know, people are really afraid from the rockets and so on, but most of the time they're really afraid for their job or their salaries or where the money will come from to my family, to my community and so on. And there is a deep connection between those two. So I hope it was understandable, and I will really hope, really be glad to hear from your questions and comments and thoughts about this notion of religious peace movement.
Thank you, Avi. Like Avi said, the floor is open. Anyone who wishes to ask can just unmute themselves and speak up. You can comment on what you heard. You can ask Avi a question.
I have a question. I think when you read the Torah, you can read in Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Numbers, that Israel land should extend up to the Jordan River. It was given by God to the Jews. So that's this literalistic reading of the Holy Scriptures. So to what extent is it common for people and for rabbis too? And is it a problem? How can you overcome this problem in your mind?
Again, I believe in that notion, in the words of God or the Torah or those prophets. You know, there is Tzipi Hotobelli is now the ambassador in the UK. She used to be a minister. She is part of the Likud. And in the first time that she talked, she was a foreign minister or vice minister or something like that. And she talked about the first Rashi in the Torah. And the first Rashi in the Torah asked, why do we have to tell those stories of Genesis? You know, the stories of Abraham and Sarah and so on. Let's start in the Halacha. Let's start in B'chodesh hazeh lachem, the first mitzvah that Moses got from God. And he said that when the nation will come to you and ask, why are you here? Why are you in Israel? Is there any right for you to be in Israel? You can say that there is a right, and the right of the fathers. But he said something really interesting, because he said that God will give you, if he wanted to, he will give you this land, and if he doesn't, he will take it from you. And this is notion that come back in the Bible again and again and again. So it's kind of in a very mystical way. I'm not such a mystical person, but in a mystical way, you can see the land of Israel as something really alive, that really sensitive to the way that we are here. We must be very, in a way, yeah, it's a kind of a simple thing, but very good people in order to have this right to be on the land of Israel. So we came here, and there is another people here, you know, Arab, Palestinians, and so on. And there is a very famous song from the 80s that said that one destiny put us here, you know, and it doesn't say Jews and Arabs, but I always think about that this way, because this is the challenge. I mean, if I believe in God, and if I believe that there is a kind of God hand in the world and in Israel, this is God's hand. This is our challenge, to live with those people. And we must find a way. Of course, I believe in the way, the model, not in only with each detail, but with the model of land for all, because this is the notion of the land is, the whole land is for the Israelis and the Jews, and the whole land is for the Palestinians and so on. But we must find a model, maybe this model, maybe another. But this is a challenge that I believe that it's also a religious challenge, because if we are fighting for this square kilometer, you know, Al-Aqsa, Temple Mount, and so on, I believe that there is some kind of plan that maybe we can't understand, because we are always we are human, you know, we are maybe 100 years here, no more. But I believe that this is part of the challenge, and you can believe. You know, it's like I'm telling to my kids that I can go and dream in the night that the Palestinian will vanish. You know, tomorrow I will get up, and of course here in Sderot, maybe it's a pleasant idea or pleasant dream, but then I will wake up and it's not the reality. So again, I can dream about those dreams, and it's okay to dream. It's okay. You know, people are really afraid in Israel from the Palestinian, and they are saying that they dream to take the whole land. Yeah, of course, they dream, maybe their dream is that the Jews will vanish. But we understand, I believe that most of Israelis understand, and most of Palestinians understand that this is not the reality. Reality changes, of course, in the course of years and 100 years and so on, but right now it's not the reality. So this is our challenge. And for me, you know, the way I understand Judaism and I understand being religious, this is part of being religious, to find the call from the reality. There is no prophets right now, and God doesn't talk from mountains of Sinai and so on. So we must find this in the reality, and we must not say, you know, we are not watching the reality, just what we dream in the night, or we wish to see. So this is part of being religious for me.
Thank you, Avi.
And maybe I'll ask Avi.
Yeah.
Do you find that since you've been active in Rabbis for Human Rights, that you've made connections and pathways with some of the traditional more in the traditional community, in the Mizrahi or also Ashkenazi rabbinate, and leaders, and if there's if you see a difference in generations as well? I'll ask specific.
Of course, it's a great question. You must understand, for those of you that doesn't know the organization, it was established for rabbis from all streams, and still now we have rabbis, Orthodox and so on, like Hanan and others. But there is more, of course, in percent in the reality, in the society, of free from rabbi, for example, and conservative and so on. And I must say that we are in the midst of change right now, and this is great for us, and kind of historical moments. More than 100 rabbis are part of being formal members of Rabbis for Human Rights, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we have this specific, you know, we are trying specifically to bring more people, more Orthodox rabbis. So this is one challenge, and you are talking about another challenge, Mizrahi rabbis. And I must say that I talked about the religious movement, the religious peace movement, and we are talking with a lot of Haredic and Mizrahi leaders that are part of, I don't know how to call it, our progressive ideas, our liberal ideas, liberal Orthodox and so on. and they are saying that something really changing in the Haredic society for the worse. In those, if we are talking about the ideas of peace, more and more Haredic young people see themselves part of being right-wing, but not in the way they used to be. They used to not see themselves as part of Zionism. They were really part, for me, I believe, really part of the notion of peace and preventing war in a lot of ways, even ways that in Israel, the Zionist way was to think that this is from the Galut, from the world that we left. And it's a kind of a weak way. And we are so strong here that we mustn't talk about what will happen and if there will be a war. Okay, so there will be a war and so on. And this is really changes. And unfortunately, there is one person that I believe that some of you know, Bezalel Cohen, is one of those leaders in the Haredic society. And we just thought with Oz V'Shalom, it's another organization, about this project of religious peace movement. And he said that if he will go and do it in the Haredic sphere, in the Haredic society, if after 3 years of project, we will be in the same place, it will be a great success, because I really feel that we are going so much to another direction. But again, I'm really optimistic, and I really see that the reality is really dynamic. I believe that things can change. The ideas of the if we are talking in Israel, it's like the peace is the ideas of the left wing. And of course, I don't believe in that. I believe that we must take responsibility, people from the right, and of course, religious people, Orthodox and so on, take responsibility about peace. But if peace is really a notion of, a political notion of the left, it's a problem, because the left right now in Israel symbolize, and maybe I will say really in a very cautious way, maybe not only symbolic, in a symbolic way, is not in connection with Judaism and Zionism and so on. It is hard for those people that you mentioned to be part of it, to be part of this notion of peace, because it belongs to another side. And I must say only in the last sentence that for me, what I try to do in Meretz is to bring back in a way the debate about Judaism and Zionism to the left, because I feel it's crazy to think that we can be really in power and to gain support from the Israelis and not talking about it. Of course, we must fight or about what Judaism is nowadays, what Zionism is nowadays, but if we are not talking the basic values of establishing Israel, and we are saying, no, it's really complicated right now, Zionism, so we will give it up. It's really complicated, Judaism, we will give it up. So this is the place that, we see the Zionism left in Israel. It's only have 13 seats in the Knesset, and this is kind of, it was a kind of a success. It is crazy.
Maybe I would ask something about in relation to the sort of the current protests and counter protests in Jerusalem about the possible eviction of some Palestinian families from their homes in Sheikh Jarrah, because it's sort of like the larger conflict in microcosm, because the families, the Palestinian families who live there now were moved there as refugees by the Jordanians after 1948, when they had been forced from their homes in what became, pre-67 Israel. But the homes that they were moved into, of course, had been Jewish homes before 1948, and families who were also evicted in the same conflict. So, you know, it's sort of the whole the whole story in microcosm. And while the Land for All movement, I think, offers, you know, a beautiful kind of longer term vision, how do you see the people of Jerusalem and of the country getting through this current spasm of violence? What's the way forward now?
Of course, it's a big and painful question right now, but the struggle in Sheikh Jarrah is a long one. It's at least 15 or 20 years. And as you mentioned, the law in Israel, of course, it's not equal, because the law in Israel said that if you left as Palestinians in 48, I said that I grew up in Ashkelon, and it used to be Majdal before 48. And if someone from Majdal want, of course, right now, but even after the war in 49 to come back, there was a law that he can't. And right now, Jews in Sheikh Jarrah said, as you mentioned, that this is our house from many years ago, and we have the right, and so on. So this is a bad law, as you're saying, a bad law make bad reality. And this is the way to be, for me, I believe. I'm not, you know, a law schooler and so on, but I believe that this is injustice, and we must find a way to repair this injustice, not with violence, of course. I'm really careful in Rabbis for Human Rights and as a human being and so on, not to say, okay, this is wrong, so I understand and I support violence. But again, you must understand, it's like in the Negev. I'm living in the Negev, Sderot is in the Negev, and there is a violence that some of it is from the Bedouins in the Negev. And I must understand that this was the way they treated not my family specifically, but the people that came, the Jews that came from Arab countries, because they were the poor people of the country in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, and so on. So most of the prisoners was Mizrahi oriented. And most of the people that had this notion that they are really violent and this is part of their culture and so on. Here, it was bombing right now. Was from Mizrahi oriented. So I understand that there is roots to violence, and it's not like it's their culture, it's Arab culture or Palestinian culture or something like that. So I must say that I believe that we can't repair it with more police and more force and so on. We have to find a way specifically to those families, but again, you mentioned the big model in a way to make this room for all of the people and saying, we want you here. Of course, it's not that we will repair it wrong by wrong, as you say, but we have to find a way to make room for those people, to the Bedouins in the Negev to flourish, and to those people in Sheikh Jarrah to flourish. And again, the people in Sderot that are living in poverty and so on, and the Haredic people that lives in poverty and so on. And in a way, Israel is so locked in fear. And of course, there is very logical roots for that. I can talk about the Holocaust, of course, but it's not only that. We have a very reasonable, reasons to be in this sphere. But again, we must understand the reality that right now, when I'm seeing Gaza, And right now we have the IDF. We are so much stronger than our brothers and sisters in Gaza, and we must find a way that they will live better. And if they will live better, my kids in Sderot will live better. So we have to have this kind of leadership that it's not caught into fear or bringing a lot of fire to the fear that it's there in the Jews' hearts and the Palestinian hearts and so on, but bring something else. And I believe that, again, you mentioned the prophets. We can find it in the Bible, in religious notion that something can change. And we think about ideal times, and we think about the Messiah, even the idea. Again, every one of us think about another thing, but it's a kind of a hopeful notion that things can be really changed radically. And I believe that religious can bring this thought and hope to the heart of people all around the Middle East and Israel.
Thank you.
You can hear that?
Hi, I'm Hillary. What do you say to people that say there's nobody to talk to now?
There's nobody, in the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very common refrain, let's say.
Yeah, of course. I can say, of course, we are in the evening that Roots organized, go to Roots and see those people, like meeting Khaled Abu Awad or the other Palestinian partners and so on. It's really interesting because I brought him to Sderot area. It's specifically, it was near Nirim, the kibbutzim near Gaza. And again, it was a young Jewish people that they came from the center. And it was again a time of kind of a war in the area. And Khaled came, and that was the notion of people. As I mentioned, also my kids can't really understand that before it was like that. And I believe in the future, it's not a future of walls and they will be there and we will be here. So again, there are a lot of courageous right now people that they are model of that. And you can talk to those people and to gain a lot of support and hope from those people. I believe that right now, if we are watching and our young people watching the leadership, they can see a lot of models. I can't say that it's all the leaders and so on, but they can see a lot of models. Of course, when I'm talking about the prime minister or the chairman in the Palestinian Authority and so on. But we can understand that there is a lot of ways to make leadership. And there are a lot of leaders, and there are Palestinians that really are partners to talk with. And again, we can understand that in the Palestinian perspective, they can say, we don't have anyone to talk with. Again, you use your power, as you mentioned in Sheikh Jarrah, in other places and so on. So we must use the power. And again, in the Palestinian society, the Hamas way gains support because of that, because they say, you can see that Hamas is the only one that gave us some achievements. And the way of the Palestinian Authority is not a good way for that. And in the Israeli society, again, it's kind of a mirror. So you must see the science. And I believe that part of it, and you are doing that in Roots, and we are doing that in Rabbis for Human Rights. We are working with a lot of pre-military academies. This is the way to work with young people, because the young people in Israel are really hopeful, and this is really bad. I believe that because I have again, the perspective. I saw another reality in Gaza, in the area, and again, in Israel, the times of Oslo Accord and so on. And the young people, just imagine the people that grew up in Sderot area, and it's more than 20 years. We just, last April, it was 20 years for the first Qassam, first rocket on Sderot. So this is the reality they know. So you must get those cracks and people and rabbis and leaders that are saying, yeah, yes, again, I understand that this is your reality. I'm not denying it. I understand that this is very hard and very harsh reality to live in and to grow up in. But again, there is something else. There is some other notion. There is another future that can be. Okay, now I will run to my shelter, I believe. Yeah. There is another comment or question.
I've got a question in response to what you were saying about the Israeli left in today's climate and atmosphere. Sort of, it's a response / question. I think, you know, just from my life and speaking with my, you know, with friends and people that I'm surrounded by who are part of the Israeli left, there's a really strong feeling that the reason why they're moving away from Zionism and from religion is because as they get exposed to Palestinians and to their narratives and to their experiences, and they look at the current torchbearers or the faces of the Zionist movement in Israel and the religious movements in Israel, it's hard to see both of those things and to not try to prioritize one of them over the other. So my question is, how do you try to bridge that gap when you're speaking to people from the left who are so invested in human rights for Palestinians, in equality for Palestinians in Israel? How do you try to get them? Because you're saying, you know, religion is important won't be enough, because then they have all these counterexamples that they can bring of religious politicians and figures in Israel, etc.
Again, this is the question in the heart of of this notion of religion as a, you know, a solution. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. You know, I feel that, and I really believe in that, and I live according to this idea. And I must say that we hear a lot. We were in the UK before the coronavirus and in other places, and people really said that for us it's kind of a healing talking with you, because you are not from a place that I don't know, Zionism is a bad ideology, and Israel is so bad and the worst, and we must hate Israel and so on, or the opposite, that Israel is perfect and you must not say anything to criticize Israel, and if you are saying so, you are anti-Semitic and so on. So this is a way of saying I really love Israel, and I really believe that there is a lot of good, not in a potential way, but also in Israel right now, as it is. But also I can see that we have to repair so many things. We have to make a very deep tikkun in Israel. So this is my drive. And again, I can see that people, Jews in the world, that think in the way that Zionism is so bad and Zionism is racism and so on, after a while that they got disconnected from Israel. So it's not a kind of motivation to make a tikkun, to make a repair Israel, better Israel, and so on. So for me, the way to make this better Israel is to understand that I'm part of Israel. I can't really make this change if I feel that I'm not part of it and it's so bad and I hate it and so on. This is my first answer to that, but I really want to take it deeply. I must recognize in that, when those, I know those people that you are talking about, and it's not like you are talking about things that doesn't exist and so on. I must recognize that. I must understand it fully, to understand that those people are really sensitive and in a very good way, in a Jewish way, I can say, to the suffering and the violation of human rights and so on. And I must find a way to connect them together to a community that make change. I will give you an example of one of the big things that we are doing every year is the olive harvest. We are going with the farmers, with the Palestinian farmers in very dangerous places near Yitzhar and Givat Ronen and other not very nice places, settlements, and we are working with them. And in our volunteers community, it's hundreds of people. In the last time, even it was the times of coronavirus and so on, it was more than 600 volunteers that came, most of them a lot of days, for thousands of times. And some of them really things like, or feel like you mentioned that they really, it's very hard for them to live in Israel, and they can see maybe only occupying Israel and so on, the occupation that Israel promotes and so on. And there are another volunteers that really not feel the opposite, but they are really Zionist and they believe that there is something that you have to repair. But we are together with the mission. And I must say that I believe, or I feel that for all those people, all the range of these people, this mission connect them together in a very good way, because when you are doing an act, and everybody, we are talking about religion. So you will come tomorrow morning to pray, and of course, everyone is coming from another place and things and other thoughts and so on, but we are doing something together and again and again and again. And this is part of being a community. So we have this community that came each year for 20 years now and doing that thing. And it's not a very big thing to do because it doesn't change the reality of occupation, but we help a lot of farmers, and we make a lot of Palestinians understand that there are people, Israelis, Jewish Israelis, that want to support them in a very practical way. It's not we are supporting you in a way that we are saying all the Palestinians are good, all the Israelis are bad, and so on. No, we are supporting specific farmers in specific places, in specific times, in their struggle to pick their olives. And for me, this is hopeful. And people are saying this is hopeful for us. We came and we thought about the disaster in the occupation and so on, but we saw that there is something good. We can build something good with those Palestinian farmers and those friends. Again, we are in the bus with those friends that are in this mission. And I must say that sometimes every month or two, they started to write in the WhatsApp all sorts of ideas, and then there is a struggle inside of those volunteers. And like in the last time, it was when there was an act in Jaffa that two Palestinians beat up a rabbi there, and he is part of a religious community there that, as far as I know, came to promote Jewish people in Jaffa and so on. And then the police said that in the end that it's not connected to that, but it was a very big debate in Israel. And then there was some volunteers that said we must do something. It's terrible that this violence and so on. And others said, of course, violence, it's terrible, but there is a reasons for that. And it was like an hour of debate, of very strong debate. And I just mentioned that we have the same mission together. It's not that we established a party or we must think alike. but we have the same mission each year with the harvest. And this is kind of a connection that people that things like that or like that can do together. So for me, a lot of an answer for that, it's in the actions itself. It's Naaseh v'nishma, not only here and here and here, and you know, just sharpen our thoughts and not doing any acts.
Avi, we have a question in the chat, and it's probably going to be the last question. It's from Lenka, and she writes as follows. I have a question to Avi. You are such an inspiring leader. Do you find yourself more effective through Rabbis for Human Rights rather than in politics in Knesset? How do these roles compare for you personally?
Okay, it's not, for me, it's not a personal question. Maybe it's a thing that I learned in Bnei Akiva. They said that if we need something, I will be something, you know, something specific. I really believe in general that in normal days that there is a Knesset that function and so on. It is really important for political leaders to be there and to be there with all their hearts and really hopeful and so on. Right now, unfortunately, it's not the place to be. I can see a lot of my friends, and I have friends from Yamina, from Bennett's party, and I have friends, of course, from Meretz and Hadash, the joint party, and so on. And they are miserable, you know, in 2 years of elections, it's really terrible, and you can do nothing. And it's your job to do, of course, something. It's not that you are part of the civil society organization and so on. You are in the parliament and you can do nothing. So right now it's a very miserable place to be. And as I mentioned, I have, for me, this mission to connect the peripheries in Israel to the center, and to, for me, I really believe in what the Talmud said, "Hizaharu b'bnei aniyim shemehem tetzeh Torah." The Torah will come from the daughters and the sons of the poor people, of the poor people that lives in poverty. And I really want it to be like that. It's like the Talmud said, "Hizaharu, be careful." But of course, the Talmud was written in the center. In the center that was there from men, of course, and in a way, strong men and so on. So I want it to happen, and this is my mission. And the mission in RHR, in Rabbis for Human Rights, it's like I said, to bring this notion, this idea of connecting human rights philosophy notion to Judaism, and in a way to להחזיר עטרה ליושנה. It's the way to reestablish that. It's not something new that we are coming to say, you know, there is a kind of idea of human rights. It's a very fascinating and new idea, and maybe Judaism can be connected to that. Of course, it's not like that. It's really rooted in a lot of, not all, but a lot of Judaism ideas. So in a way, it's that just clearing our views, just clearing our glasses in order to see that. So right now, I really feel very, very good in Rabbis for Human Rights, and we are, as I mentioned, in kind of historical moments of gaining more and more support from the community of rabbis. I believe in rabbis as leading models, and it's not only for communities or, you know, teaching leaders, and so this is really important, but also, as I mentioned, to doing to the Naaseh. And I also believe that you must not neglect the political sphere. And this is kind of what happened in Israel for many years, of course, in those 2 years, but in many years, a lot of very good people saying, I believe that it's also in your places, wherever you are coming from, this is something for, you know, kind of bad people or people that can get into the dirt and so on. There is a very harsh cynicism that we are making to this political sphere, which it's very self-defeating ideas, because this is the sphere that people take in our resources, our money, and so on, and have to establish and to flourish our nations and our countries and so on. So I believe that we must make this change. I can see a lot of optimistic thing. Again, you are a part of education processes and so on. So you can see it in education. You can see a lot of optimistic things and a lot of people that really brings light to their community. So we are in the midst of that. So I believe that that was the last question. And again, I must say, you can always talk with me directly through RHR or through Facebook or WhatsApp and so on. And really feel free to do so. Again, as Hanan mentioned, we are partners in a very deep way. Not partners in the way that we are doing everything together or think alike, but partners in the deep notion, in the deep mission. And I really believe that we have, all of us, really have right now kind of being a part and supporting and push ahead this idea of religious peace movement, and I'm optimistic about it. The day will come, and I hope it will be tomorrow, but maybe it will be in a year or 5 years or 10 years, but it will come.
Thank you very much, Avi. What we'd like to do, what we strive to do in these events, is to end about now, but after we close, to leave the opportunity for the next 10 minutes for those who want to stay on in a more private or intimate conversation with you. In the chat, I see 2 or 3 questions. I don't understand both of them, but I will close, and then those people, Doron and Tai, may want to stay on, perhaps some others, and have a more intimate conversation with you. So what I want to do in closing, after thanking Avi and thanking Rabbis for Human Rights for our partnership with Roots, is to remind everyone that we are indeed restarting this series of Sunday Zoom events, not once a week. We've been doing for the first year of the virus of Corona, but now once a month or sometimes twice a month. Our next event is going to be Sunday, May 30th, the same time, same station. The speaker is Yechezkel Landau, a very, very old friend of mine, and he's going to be talking about holistic peacemaking. Holistic peacemaking. I suggest everyone join us. It's going to be good. And with that, I'll also remind everyone of the website of Roots, friendsofroots.net. Please visit us, friendsofroots.net. I'll also remind everyone that these events cost Roots money. If you're able to make a contribution of approximately $15 per event, that would be great. Help us with the work as it goes on. So anyone whose time is short, please, you can leave, and anyone who wants to stay on can spend another 10 minutes with Avi. Thank you very much for joining us.
Rabbi, can I just ask a question about the timing? It had been 2:30 Eastern until we went to daylight savings, and then it was 3:30, and now it seems to be back to 2:30 again.
There was a change in time of just for 1 week when Israel and the US weren't coordinated. But when both of them are on daylight savings time, it's 2:30.
Okay, so it's back to 2. Okay, thank you.
2:30 Eastern Daylight Time.
Okay.
Everyone's free to go, but I see most of us are still here. Jolene. So there were 2 people, Tai and
Tai and Doron.
Yeah, if you want, I can explain my question.
And after, at this time, Amir also wants to say something, I think. After those 2. Yeah.
I'm from Tel Aviv. I'm an anti-theist, basically, and I won't explain what that means. But my view on religion in Israel, right, is that maybe in the diaspora, religion could have a positive it could carry a positive moral force. Okay, could be the positive morally, but ever since like political power was given to religion, okay, and it came back to the Holy Land, okay, so it got back to biblical morality, which is no morals at all, basically. And it's becoming more and more extreme. Like if you look, this is a coarse generalization, right? But this is the way I see it. If I look at if I would run a census, most religious people would be like militant, anti-democratic, and anti-moral for me, like for the way I look at it. And I think it's a little bit naive to look at a phenomenon and think that it's positive when it's mostly negative.
Of course, I'm naive. It's okay. I don't have any problem with that. Again, you are talking about the big challenge. Of course, it's a very different challenge in the diaspora, in a way that you don't have any army, you don't have any power, you are not the ruler, you are not the leader, you don't have the majority. And right now in Israel, it's another challenge, and it's a very big challenge. And you know, of course, you live in Israel, so you know that a lot of people talking about this challenge that we couldn't make the last times, and maybe it will be again some kind of a collapse society, that those tribes will fight each other till the end or something like that. But I again believe that we can write another history. We can, of course, we can write the same history all over again, to fight till death with those tribes and in the Middle East, and to vanish from the Middle East, or to go to another places, you know, like people are saying, go back to Europe, or in my case, I don't know, to Libya or Syria, something like that. Maybe it will be like that. I believe that it will be very wrong, and I believe I must say that I understand fully what you say. When I can see Netanyahu is talking again and again about the Holocaust, and that explains it all. And if we are talking about Hag or something like that, the Holocaust. I believe that this is a notion that it's a short-term notion. You know, if you can't see ourselves in the Middle East, if we can see ourselves as part of the nation, you know, even in when we are talking about the UN and so on, if we can see the ideas of the independence declaration, that talking about that we have the right from the nation, and we want to give this hand of peace to our Arab countries, neighboring countries, and so on, it will be short term. So there is a kind of a struggle like it was in Judaism many years ago. Like you can talk about Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai and Rabbi Akiva or others that symbolize more particular and you know, a force way, and Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai that see it in another way, that you must go to this moral, as you mentioned, and those ideas, and it's more important, the soul of Judaism, it's more important than being the ruler, or to fight till the last, your last blood in Jerusalem, or so on. So I can say that I agree that this is a very big challenge, and I also agree that right now there is a lot of things that we can see and be pessimistic about. Of course, the phenomena of Smotrich party, for example, because for me, I still feel like, you know, Tzionut Hadatit, the religious Zionism is part of me. I grew up in this community, and then someone taking this phrase and saying, my party is the religious Zionism. It brings the students of Kahana, and brings Noam, that lives only from hate, LGBT and so on, it's a very dangerous thing. So we must fight it, and we are fighting that, and we need all of your support in RHR, in Roots, in Oz V'Shalom, in a lot of organizations and people that really try to fight it. So I can see what I mentioned. If I understand correctly, you are asking if I'm talking or explaining my kids that there is a violation, and more than that, as you mentioned, of human rights from our side, of course, to the Gaza people. You want to say something, Tai? We can't hear you.
You're on mute, Ty.
Aman?
Ty, unmute yourself.
Can't hear you. Oh,
That was the video. You have to press on the unmute.
That should get it.
okay.
That-
Is that any better?
No.
Did that work?
Yeah. So I will try to answer that.
Avi, did it come any better now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, right now, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, good. You mentioned a couple times your children, you talked to them and
Yeah.
they said, if they could have their reality, they'd snap their fingers and the Palestinians would be vanished. And you said, no, that can't happen. They're not going anywhere. And so my question is, and your children obviously live very close to Gaza and the action that goes on there. During the Great March of Return last year, did you make any effort to show your children the disastrous consequences of the Israeli aggression and say, children, not only aren't they disappearing, they're trying to get out of prison, and use that as a learning experience to try and change their mind, because only when we change the children's mind is this going to change.
Actually, I'm doing wrong to my children. They really can see the complexity of things that happen in Gaza. And I will say, and this is, maybe it's easy for them with me as their father, but also people in Sderot, people tend to think about the people in Sderot that really want to, I don't know, to explode everything on Gaza and kill everyone and so on. A lot of people in Sderot, no, but a lot of people in Sderot have connection with people from Gaza because they used to be our neighbors, not in the way they are here. They walk in our fields and they build our buildings and so on. So there is connection till now. So it's crazy. Like something happened like right now. So this person from Gaza can pick his phone and ask his friend in Sderot, do you feel okay? What happened to your family and so on? And the opposite, the one from Sderot will do the opposite to Gaza. So again, my children, of course, they understand that this is really bad to live in Gaza. And they are living from the right, in a way that it's better, right side of the wall. But can they understand as children why? And again, as I mentioned, I don't want to make this kind of hanacha, Hanan,
assumption,
discount. The discount for for the people in Gaza, or of course for Hamas, and say, no, I understand why they are doing that. So this is good. This is good to shoot rockets into our towns, which is again violation of human rights. But they understand.
I think it's terrible.
Yeah, but they understand. My kids understand that it's not coming from nowhere. That this is terrible to live there, and we are not doing enough. We are we have more in so many ways more power than them, and we can make so much difference. So again, they understand it's not equal. It's not that they can do something, we can do something, and everything will be okay. We can do much more. And it's really interesting because most of the mayors all around, they really understand it. They're really pushing ahead a project in terms of electricity and economic project together with the people in Gaza, because they understand. Some of them, the mayor of Sderot is part of Bennett's family party. So they understand that if they will have something to lose or they will have something to live for, it will be better for us. So this is kind of the equation that we want to gain. I can see that is not with us right now. So I must end now. Thank you so much, Hanan, for your invitation. Thank you so much for hearing me and for your lovely comments and questions. And this is really sharpened the mind. And again, be our partners with RHR, and for me specifically, you can be in touch and ask questions and say your thoughts and comments. And inshallah, we will bring more peace to this region.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Amen.
Laila tov.
Thank you all for participating.
Amen. I'm sorry we didn't get to your question.
Yeah, he already leave, so I think it's a bit was late, but yeah, maybe next time. Like actually, I have a magnificent question, but yeah.
Good night.
Good night, but yeah, it was like a good presentation. Thank you, Hanan, and the organizer, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
You're welcome. I recognize you from Facebook.
Yeah, it was really fantastic to be participating in this. I want to come to every one you do.
Great. Very good.
I'm going to see if I can get more interest and more participation for you.
Okay, next one is May 30th.
No, it really is good to us have a face-to-face look at each other instead of just typing on Facebook.
Yes, indeed.
So thank you very, very much.
Thank you for showing your face.
Ta-da! I only could figure it out at the end.
Okay, good night. For us, it's
Good night.
here.
Okay, Hanan,